If you're looking for an affordable ultralight tent for your solo adventures, the 3FUL Lanshan 1 Pro may be the tent for you. We're gonna go over everything that's good about the tent and what's bad to see if it sacrifices anything in order to achieve that relatively low price. Starting off with what's good, the Lanshan 1 Pro costs around $120 to $150 US. You can pick it up on AliExpress. That's probably the best way to get it. I'll post links in the description if you're looking to check that out. First question that most people have when they have a tent, they come across a tent that's as affordable as this one, is what's the quality like? And I'll be honest, I've had this tent for over 2 years and I've been super impressed with it. It's made with a 20 denier ripstop nylon material that has a double silicone coating, which we'll get into a little bit more later. But the material is very robust and durable. All the stitching's really well done, and I would not hesitate in a second to take this tent on a longer trip, maybe something that's going to be experiencing a lot of wind, rain, snow. I've had this tent out in the winter, had it out in wind, had it out in rain, and it's performed phenomenally. I'd even take this tent out on a longer thru hike like the Great Divide Trail and not think twice about it. This material really is quite phenomenal. The silicone treatment that it has means that it doesn't absorb as much water or moisture when you're in rain or heavy condensation environments, which is awesome because that means you're carrying less water weight on your back after using this tent in rain or condensation scenarios. The catch-22 is that they can't seam tape the seams in the factory, so you do have to seam seal it yourself. Once you seam seal the tent, it does a very good job at protecting you from the weather. I've had this tent out in rain, snow, super windy conditions, and I've hunkered down in it without any problems. You can put down both doors if the weather's really bad, or you can open up one door if you want a little bit more ventilation. Or if you really want to, you can open up both doors and just have a nice wide open tent. The geometry of the Lanshan 1 Pro means that it has really steep angled walls, which allows the tent to dump snow and wind really well. So it performs really well in both those conditions. From this angle, we can get a really good idea of the size of the tent. It's not a huge tent. This is a one-person tent, but it's 230 centimeters long, which is actually a pretty good length for a one-person tent. And then 90 centimeters wide at either end and 110 centimeters wide in the middle. So because you have that extra width in the middle, once you have your sleep system set up in there, you can put something next to you. There's actually enough space that if you really want to, you could probably put a small pack in there. The big question a lot of people are gonna have, especially with a one-person tent like this, is what's the livable space like inside the tent? And you can see I have a lot of room above my head if I'm sitting up in the middle here. So if you need to get changed into a sweater or something like that, then you have the space to do that. And then the other question is how much room is there at the head and foot end so that you're not gonna be touching the inner walls of the tent, because this is a single wall tent. So that means is if there's condensation on the inner walls, you don't have a mesh layer to protect you from that. So if your sleeping bag or your head touches those walls when there's condensation on them, then you're gonna be getting wet. But I have a 3-inch sleeping pad in here. I have a pillow and I have lots of room above my head here. And then I still have lots of room at my foot end as well, even with using a super lofty warm sleeping bag. And I'm 5'10", so I have lots of extra room in here. I would say that this tent is probably good for anyone up to 6'2", with thicker sleeping pads and quilts or sleeping bags like I'm using right now. I just want to touch on one more benefit I think a single wall tent like this has, and that's that it's really easy to wipe down condensation from the inside of the tent if you are in a high condensation environment. If this was a double wall tent, it makes it a lot more difficult to wipe down condensation from the inside. And I've experienced that firsthand with the little brother of the Lanshan 1 Pro, the Lanshan 1 Original. And then that brings us to the last good thing about this tent that I want to talk about, and that's the weight. The Lanshan 1 Pro only weighs 690 grams. That's without the trekking pole and tent stakes, which is very lightweight for a one-person tent. Moving on to the bad things about this tent. First up, the shipping. The tent ships from China if you purchase on AliExpress, and it will take 3 to 4 weeks to get to you if you live in North America or Europe. So that shipping delay might be a problem for some people. The other issue for some people might be the size. It is a one-person trekking pole tent, so it's not huge, and if you're over 6'2", you probably just won't fit in it at all. So just keep the sizing in mind and the conditions that you're gonna be going out in. If you do want a little bit more living space outside of the tent, you can just use this tent for sleeping in and then bring a tarp or something to hang out in during the evenings. Another negative for some people might be that they have to use a trekking pole in order to erect this tent. There's some thought out there that trekking pole tents are harder to assemble, but I honestly think after a little bit of practice, they might even be easier than some other tents, especially tents that you have to set up the inner and then set up the fly over top of it. Sometimes those tents can be a big pain in the butt, especially if it's super windy. Trekking pole tents like this don't have that problem, and because they're just all-in-one systems, they protect the inner tent from weather. And if you don't use trekking poles, then that's not a problem either. You can pick up these carbon fiber poles that actually weigh less than a trekking pole, and you can use that to set up the tent. Again, I'll have links to this stuff in the video description. The last bad thing about this tent is that you have to seam seal it yourself. That's a 20 to 30 minute job and a little bit tedious, so not the most fun thing, but I think the benefits that you get from the material the tent is made out of outweigh that 20 to 30 minutes that it's gonna take you to seam seal the tent yourself. Get the Lanshan 1 Pro if you're looking for a tent and you prioritize weight and cost. But because it is also very high quality and functions very well, it gets a Gear Priority Top Pick Award. Go check out my video on the Decathlon Trek 100 down jacket. It's the jacket I'm wearing right now. It's also a very quality, high functioning product that does not cost very much at all.